the younger people, they are essentially getting a double whammy in terms of the people that are, for example, holding properties. Let's say properties, because a lot of wealth in the UK is actually held in properties currently. So the people that are living longer are holding on to the properties for longer. More properties are, there is higher competition for the properties that are left behind, because we've got the immigration and the young people are being squeezed. So have you got any ideas of what might work, where we still keep the system that is actually fair, but more open to young people getting the piece of the pie?
Well, you covered so much very interesting ground there. I mean, one thing I do want to say about older people living longer is that mathematically, you could solve the dependency problem by encouraging euthanasia. And I think that would be the solution that would be hugely worse than the problem. So it's no coincidence,
Well, the
as the
Canada is doing
Marxists would have
it.
said. Yeah, exactly. And as I said, I was going to say, there used to be a Marxian term, it is no coincidence that ... And then they would talk about some cultural movement or some change in attitude, and then they would link it as dialectical historical materialists to some underlying economic factor or material factor. And I think it's no coincidence that as we are having all the problems that I outline in my book, and they're only going to get worse about the balance in society by age, that we are having more and more acceptability of euthanasia, and on a mass scale in somewhere like Canada. And I think that our societies are undergirded. There's often a lot of value in societies, a lot of support by things you can't really see. And the fact that we assume human life is valuable underpins an awful lot of what makes life livable and civilized. Now, I'm not going to comment on what goes on in hospices, wonderful organizations, by the way, and how people at the very end get treated and whether it's worth that investment and that effort when they're suffering to give them a few more days. That's kind of very much at the end, and it's difficult to legislate for. And I think a lot happens that is pragmatic, and I don't have a very strong ideological view on that. But if we start to say, because of the problems I've talked about, that if only we could just move the old off a little bit quicker, I think it will undermine our value of human life, and I think the consequences will be really serious. I have no idea what they'll be, but I think societies that don't value human life are going to be pretty nasty places. So that's the first thing I would say. Then when we come on to the intergenerational stuff, I mean, I think you raise a really good point with Poland. So, I mean, I don't know how old you are, you don't need to tell me, but I remember Lech Walesa in the early 80s and the General Jaruzelski and the military and so I remember quite well. And then, of course, Poland was so important in breaking that down. And certainly for your parents' generation, they will have seen extraordinary change in the standard of living and Poland's been so successful in so many ways. I'm sure if I lived in Poland, there would be, I've only been to Poland once. I went to Krakow on business. And you go around Krakow and you think, this is not a place, honestly, frankly, it makes a lot of Britain look poor and shabby. And, this is not a place that is backward in any way. It's sort of, it works, the transport works, the people are well clothed and well fed and efficient, everything works efficiently. So I'm sure if I lived in Poland, I'd have criticisms and so on. But somewhere like Poland, from 30 years of broadly free market liberal capitalism, has so transformed itself materially that we really mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and ignore all those incredible insights, which go all the way back to Adam Smith, through neoclassical economics, and practitioners like Thatcher and Reagan, and Hayek. I don't want to throw any of that out. I want to keep the good things. But at the same time, we can't just say, well, that's the dogma and that works. So too bad if you're not, if you're at the wrong end of the spectrum. I think it's fine to have winners and losers in society, and it's fine that we have some kind of safety net at the bottom. But when the winners are so heavily concentrated in one cohort, and it's not, and you can see that the following cohorts aren't getting up the ladder the way the younger ones did, then as I said, we're going to end up with it's bad in itself, but we're going to end up with the whole of society and that the system being questioned and eventually undermined. So we've got to do something to redress this. On the other hand, I mean, we know that a lot of boomer wealth is going to start passing down, and that's a rather random process. But if you say to people who've accumulated a bit of money, when you die, the government's got good uses for that money, you're not going to be able to pass it on to your kids, make life a bit better for them, then you're going to undermine the capitalist system. So that's the tension. To keep enough incentives going that people are still going to work and take risks and stick their neck out and go the extra mile and all that, which is what you need to create wealth in a society. We mustn't strip that away, but at the same time, we've got to do something about the younger people. Now, I haven't got the answers. I'm not a brain of the size of Keynes remotely, but we need someone like Keynes to think this through. All I can add really is to understand what the demographic underpinnings are, and the fact that as we get older societies, as the younger generation shrivels relative to society as a whole, we put more and more burden on them, which in turn disincentivizes them from having children. And that whatever the answer is, wherever that brilliant Keynes or the next Adam Smith who can find a way through this is going to come from, it's not going to work in an environment of shriveling demography and aging. It's only going to work. Part of the pattern, part of the picture has to take account of demography and has to try and find ways to revitalize us so that we have plenty of young people. Having lots of young people, having a new baby boom is not going to fix the problem in itself. But I'm sure that the problem can't be fixed without it.